Okay. Now we will see what are the select tags. In selection tags, already we have seen a couple of them like select list, select options. We already see. Now we'll see the select checkbox and select list. And by the name itself, you might understand this is not selection list. This is just select list. Okay, the select list um, is used to um, display uh, drop down values with a single or a multi-select. So you can have this select list as a based on size. We can decide whether it's a single select or a multi-select. Whereas if it's a checkbox, instead of drop down, we'll be having a display the checkbox group which is going to be a multi-select, and select option is each option in in checkbox group or select list or a select radio is just an option. So like let's say if we have a drop down list, we will be having each options, right? So this is nothing but each option. In those options will be common for a checkbox group, select list, or a radio group. Is used to display the radio selection. So you'll be having a group of options with a radio button. That means you'll be selecting only one. It will looks like similar to a checkbox group or a radio group, where a checkbox is a multi-select, as a radio will be a single select. Whereas if you see a select option, which is the combination of a single and a multi, but if you want to have some input box or something, a checkbox group will be a multi-select one and radio will be a single option one. This will be split into two options. Now is used to um, declare a, a temporary variable in VF page. So usually the variables where we keep the variables, we'll keep the variables in a Apex, not in a Visualforce page. Whereas if you want to declare some new variable in a Visualforce page, then we'll use a variable, and we'll see some use cases for it. Apex Word, I don't see, I never use it, but I looked at some documentation, but I didn't get any documentation for this one. But anyway, we'll cover this at the end, or like we'll just keep on hold for now. Okay, now let's get into a trial, or like we'll just have this also described. Command button is used to call Apex method on click as a button. And now what is the Apex command line? Command line is nothing but it's exactly same, but instead of link, it will be just a line. It will represent so line or a link with a actionpoller is used to call Apex on a regular intervals, and the default is 60 seconds, and minimum is 5 seconds. That means, let's say if you're having something called action poller, so what actually it does was, let's say if you have a button, when apex will be called, when you click, then only it will call the apex. Again, when it will call, again when you click, then only it will call the apex. But something, if you want to check continuously in a regular interval, let's say for every 2 minutes you want to some call some apex and some get some data and refresh it, you can use action poller or something. If you're running some jobs, apex job, so what it will do, it will queue and it will take some time to run, right? So in Visualforce page, if you have some logic to upload a file and process the data, and once the process is complete, then you have to let know, then you have to do the action poller and continuously checking the batch job status, whether it's completed or aborted or failed, what happens to the batch job. You continuously check, and whenever it's done, then will be some make some flag and will stop the poller. Something where you have to regular intervals, you want to call apex without clicking any action, then you have to use the action poller. So action support we have already used. Action support is used to um, give additional what you can say, additional support, additional support to the tags that are not having a capability to call apex. Let's say if you have a usually what all having a option to call an apex, a command button, command link, or these two usually having the o- option to call an apex. But for example, a drop down value or an input text, where on change of those values, if you want to call an apex where they're not capable of calling apex, where action support will give the additional support to the tags and um, help in calling the apex whenever the some events are happening on that tags, and kind of a change, click, double click, mouse over, mouse in, mouse out. So some there are some ajax events, so it will support all those events on what are the tags that are not supported with the action tag. An action function is used to create a JavaScript function, create a JavaScript function to call apex. So let's say you want to call an apex from a JavaScript, or you want to expose any of the apex method. So when you can call apex method will be called only when if you click on some button or link or action poller, something, if you do something or regular intervals, you can call apex method. But if you have some JavaScript code, from there you want to call an apex after some condition, some logic that you perform on JavaScript, or like any kind of events like on chain, anyway that action support will do. But if you want to expose a apex method to be called from a JavaScript method, then we'll use a action function which will expose a apex method as a JavaScript function. Okay, we'll have an example so we can have a more understanding. An action region, so it is nothing to do with the action, actually is use it to limit the data that is um, that is carried to the apex while calling the action method. That means usually what happens is, let's say you're having some form tag in a Visualforce page and you did some click on a button or a link, anything that you did. So what will happen? It will bring whole page. That means we will be having getter and setter methods, right? For the variables what you're having. So what will happen? Whatever there in the Visualforce page, everything will be captured to a Apex class in that method. All will be reflected. What if in case, let's say if you're having some form where you have some required fields and some dependent fields and all, but on change of some field, you don't want you want to call Apex to bring some data, but you don't want to run all validations, or you don't want to bring all the data to Apex, and you want to make it lightweight. In those scenarios, we can maintain the Apex action region. So when you mention any region, and within that region, if you're having any of the action calls happening in that action call, what will happen was it will only bring the action region block only. It will not extend to the full page. It will only restrict the call to Apex only to this Apex region, not to the entire page. That's what the action region. It will control the region that's bringing from Visualforce to Apex as a region uh, during the Apex call. Okay, coming to a page tags. I think this one we already know. So every Apex page will start with the Apex page, and then Apex page block is used to have the block kind of a UI and classic format is used to have a block kind of UI and a classic format. And page block buttons, it will help you in aligning the buttons that are used in a page block. Now page message. So we have two tags, Apex page messages and Apex page message. Apex page messages will help you to bring the whatever the page message that you are adding from the Apex class to a Visualforce page. So if you remember, whenever we save the record or when we have some kind of validation errors, so we'll display in the Visualforce page by using the Apex page messages tag, just a tag in the Visualforce page. But the messages we used to add from a we used to add from the Apex class from the method from Apex page messages dot new Apex page message dot add, and we'll be having a severity like a confirm, error, warning, and fatal. We're having these error severities, and we'll be having a summary of the message. But whereas Apex page message, it's kind of a hard-coded message from a Visualforce page. If we have some fixed messages to display in the page, it is helpful. So this will also having the same. It will be having a severity and it will be having a summary, and we can control the visibility also by controlling some flags. Page block table, it is used to display the list of records in a classic style of the standard pages and take care of the field formatting of the subject fields. Page block item, this one we can say it is used to structure the elements in a page block section, and we'll be having one more called page block section. It is used to divide the page block into a sections that are collapsible, which is optional. Okay, and we have this. Okay, we'll come to these points later. First we'll try to have some examples for all the tags. I will come back to the remaining tags. Okay, let's give a quick round. Okay, select tags example. Select tags example VF page. Select tags example. Select tags example, and here we're going to have a controller. First I will try to have all those ones. Select tags example. Okay, so public, we're going to have a select options, select option, I would say. My options. So public select tags example. Here we're going to add some options over here. Dot add
Balu, you muted.
Sorry. Yeah, we have a page block sections, and done. Now let's move on to a next page block section with the checkbox ones. So now um, here I would say checkbox group or something. I would say this item will be going to have a apex select checkboxes. In the select checkboxes also we're going to have a value, and what I'll do is selected options, and then I would say list of string as a selected checkboxes. Selected checkboxes. I'd like to give it as a new list of a string, and then selected options. Selected options. Selected options. Selected checkboxes. And now what else will be having? We'll be having a selected radio. Will be having so. Selected radio. Select checkbox group, and okay. Now selected checkboxes is going to be the value over here. Selected options here, and I'm going to have a same options as this one. Apex. Okay, same options. I'm going to have a same options. I'm going to display. Okay, done. So now we'll see. Okay, now we have a multiple groups, so we have to set some attributes over here. So do you have anything called a width or something? Check. Style and style class. Thing on blur, legend text, border. Okay, border equal to 1. And then I'm going to have a style equal to width as something called 400 pixel. Okay, we should have one after other, right? I have this one. Yeah, I will we'll see how to arrange those values. So we have the checkbox groups, right? So we can select a whatever the group we would like to select, and now we'll be going to have a radio. Select radio group, and here we're going to select radio. radio. Oh, here I'm going to have a selected radio option, and I'm going to give that value. And I'm going to have those options. So my options only. So everything will be same as ever one. And now, so what else we have? We have a radio. We have a select list. We have select option. We've seen selected checkbox. We have seen and selected list only. We have a multiple value selection also available. So here I'm going to give exactly same with the multiple and columns fine and size equal to, I'm going to give 4 and multi select equal to true. Then it will become, we have to my options, selected options we have. Okay, now done, all cool, everything fine. So now we have drop down and we have radio, and here if you see we can select a multiple values over here. So that's what. So size I would say here something called 8. It will be more having visible thing. And if it is a radio, if you look at the radio, so you can select only one value if it is a radio. If it's checkbox, we can have a multiple options we can select. Now we'll work on how to arrange it in a one by one fashion, and something on this one. If you look at here, so it is like not in a good color. I don't see this color, and if we want to control this color, how can we control that? So let's say just I was jumping into the other tabs. So if I look at account, so if we have any sections in this page, mm, 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 let's say if we have a project, we have some sections in it, right? So we have some colors in this accordion, right? So if I want to give a style of this project object, so whatever the object tab style of this project, I want to give the same style to my VF page. How can we give that style? Is, so here we have option called a tab style, and we can mention the like as object name, so that the same object tab style will be applied to the your custom Visualforce page also. So now I have used this one. So let's say if you want to use a different, so if you have some account and then once you say, you can see the style will change. See, now it's changed. So if you want to change any of the standard tag styles, you have to apply over on the page, on the page styles. So tab style, we have to mention the S object name over there. Now we'll see how to, now there's an option called layout equal to page direction, where it will, the options will display the downwards. We want to display it in a horizontal, then we have to give a default value, so that it will come one after other, the values are. So here let's add some label to it, checkboxes, and here for it actually radio, radio, and then radio options. And if you see, these are all the options, select checkboxes, select list, select options, and the select radio options are what we have seen. So let me look at the page. First one is a single select. So we can select only a single value from it, and the size is 1. And here, if you want to see the more, then just we can select multiple values over here. The same set, just we will be setting a flag as a multiple equal to true. And here with checkboxes, here we need to use a control button plus a mouse click to do this. But whereas, let's say I have something to without using a control. If I want to click something like this one, checkboxes, I can have this one, and usually we will not get this border and the scrolling and all. So I added some styles on the field standard. If you want to override any of the Visualforce standard styles, then we have to override with the style tag, and we have to mention them. Some of the cases like I want to overflow after certain side height. So after 90 px, I would like to get scrolling, and width I want to 100% and minimum inline size and fit content. I gave and all this what are all the alignments and borders I have to mention so that it will come like a box. So if I want to adjust further, you can add some CSS and get it. And whereas the radio, we don't have option to select multiple. On the radio itself, meaning we can select only one value. So that's what a select. But if you see the code difference, everything will be the same. Select options we need to get, but the tag, the select tag is going to be different. Select checkboxes, select checkboxes. So this one is a select checkboxes, and then what is a select radio? We have a select radio, and then we have a select list. So all are there. This is how we can use this example and build those. Now, um, command button we already seen, and we don't see the command link. Let's create a new page and then here let's create a Apex class with a what are we saying, action tags, right? I guess action tags are, yeah, action tags, action tags example. Any questions before we moving forward on this example Visualforce page where we have a different kind of a select tags what we're having?
Fine, Ball, no questions.
Okay, now here we're discussing about action tags, right? Action tags example. In the action tags example, mm, action tags example. Page. Controller. Here, let's have some action tags included here. Page block. Action tags example. Here, I'm going to have BL Apex Apex command link, and here that's going to call the value equal to my link, and then action public void my action. Just I'm not having any action over here. Just I was. So my action. So I have a command link also. I used to call the method and command link. We have command button. We already seen, but I will just give for example purpose. So I have the buttons. Here it's a link and button section, and then now looking onto the action poller under action support action functions. I think action support and action function we already use, but anyway, I will give one example with the action poller, action function, all this. So, okay, let's start with the action poller, which is new to us. So let's get started. Um, action poller. So here, what I will do was, we'll see action poller starter, and I will give some expression over here saying that poller starter id equal to fm button section. Polar section. Okay, I'm just giving the IDs over there. Now I would like to have one over there, like to have a public integer get set, and then we're having public string counter count second string. Here we say Polar starter. No, I would say Polar starter equal to no, and your counter I would say 0 seconds. Say polar action. In polar action, what I will do was just I will increment it by, like, let's say 10 seconds. I will increment. Polar action polar called. Okay, now good. Now is polar starter. So is polar starter, and now so break polar started with the count. I'm going to give the counter in seconds. Okay, now here I'm going to write my action poller, apex action poller. So where I'm going to have a interval, I'm going to set 10 seconds, and then action. Action I'm going to call every time is my polar action. So this is my polar action. So polar action, and then what all tags I have? Interval, enabled or disabled, and then on submit, render, re-render, status. Okay, I'll give a re-render. Every time I want to re-render my above section, what I will give us, I will give one more apex apex output. Let's say I'm giving a output panel. Keeping everything in it as a output panel, and I will give a id equal to polar result. Re-render polar result I want to re-render. Okay. Okay, and now what I'm going to say, enabled equal to I'm going to give enabled equal to start polar. So start polar is going to be my boolean variable, public boolean variable, and I would say is a get and set value. Start polar, initially I was putting it as a false value, but whenever I'm going to call this above method, I'm going to call it as a true. Okay, and now I would say my action, I would say start polar instead of that one. Stop polar link. Let's see, false. Polar, start polar. Okay, start polar. So the button I'm going to do, sorry, I'm going to go for a say start polling, and I'll give stop polling, and I'll call a stop polar link. Okay, hope so far it is clear and understandable. Let me explain clearly. So I was trying to build some scenario with using all this action polar, command link, and command button. Now, as trying to do, I want to run a polar. So whenever I do a start polar as a button, and I'm calling a apex method where I'm setting the flag as a true whenever I enable. So where enable is equal to true, then what will happen was this will start polling the method. And once I do start, for every second it will call the method, and I'm calling the method called a polar action. So whenever I call this polar method like a polar action, whenever it called, I was incrementing this counter by a number 10. Initially it will be a 0, but whenever it start polling for first time, it will increase 10, and after 10 seconds it will increase 10, and it will keep on increasing until unless I'll stop it. So where I will stop, I'm going to provide a link to stop the polar link. So I was using command link and stop polling, and this method will call the action, and this action stop polling will disable the poller. So whenever it disable, then it will reflect over here. So here what I'm doing was re-render I'm going to give this section called polar section. So re-render polar section, and in the stop also I'm going to re-render polar section. Okay, let's see how it works. Okay, and I'm not happy with the tab style, so I'm going to use the tab style as a account. Okay, so now I have a stop polling and start polling. So if I'm not doing anything, so I'm waiting and seeing if it increases any count or not. So I think it's maybe 10 seconds. So let's wait for just 2 or 3 seconds and see if it's increase any count or not. Now I'm starting the polling. I started. Now it's 10. 20. So let's say I want to increase this frequency. What is the minimum interval that we can give in the action poller? 5.
5.
So I'm going to give a 6 and see how the poller is working. I'm going to start the poller. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, started. And in next 6 seconds, it will again increase. So let's say I don't want to poll anymore. I want to stop the polling. Just I will click on the stop polling. So started. Okay, I think this flag I was not set. I was not setting this flag. Something called is polar starter. When I was this one, I was saying yes. Again, while I have a stop polar, I'm going to set it as a no, so that it will be very clearly visible to me how it is going to work. When I say start, so it's saying yes, it started, and I can see the polling count over here. In a similar way, if I want to stop at any point of time, I want to see if it's polling started or not, or stopped or not. So let's say I stop polling, and it's saying no. So this is how a polling and command button and command links will work. Okay, we have a few more action tags called action support and action function and action region. We'll continue back after some time. Any questions so far?
Yeah, fine, volume.
Okay then. Yeah, we'll again connect back and we'll see.